Welcome to Livewire, a podcast powered by Kosciusko REMC. We are a member-owned and locally operated cooperative that supplies electricity to portions of Kosciusko, Fulton, Wabash, and Whitley counties here in northern Indiana. Livewire is a program where we come together to discuss co-op matters, energy, community topics, and to communicate with KRMC members. I am your host, Laura Cini. Welcome back to another episode of Livewire. Joining us in studio today is Mike Whitaker, Manager of Operations at Kosciusko REMC. He is here to discuss winter electric safety, what to do during winter power outages, and other winter electric tips. Hey Mike, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at Kosciusko REMC?
Sure. So this summer I'll be here 21 years. I started out as a meter tech, went around and in the old days, I like to call it, 20 years ago when I started, we had to go around and get people's meter readings. And the difference between months is the amount that they would pay per kilowatt. If people didn't turn in their meter readings, that's what we had to do. We also did disconnects for non-payment and, among other things, we were always on the go. And I did that for about a year and a half. Then I entered into the apprenticeship program, which is a 4-year program to become a lineman. And then I was a lineman up until last year when I took this position. So I've been in this position a little over a year now. And enjoying it and just learning a lot still. Excited about the future.
That's exciting to hear your journey through the company.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention what I do, but last year in January, I took the position of operations manager. So basically, I oversee the engineering and operations department, how the line gets built, any contractors that we bring in, and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. What are some of the biggest electrical hazards homeowners face during the winter?
So obviously in the wintertime, people are more concerned about their power going out because it's cold. But in the wintertime, if there's things that cause people's power to go out, sometimes it can be ice storms. It can be heavy snow that are getting on branches, causing the power lines to break and snap. One misconception that a lot of people have is if the power line is on the ground, then it means it's de-energized and that, it would be safe to walk around. Don't ever assume that a power line laying on the ground is de-energized and that it does not have power on it, especially if there's ice and snow, because that can act like an insulator. And that wire could lay there hot on the ground and you would never know. There's no indication that that wire has 7,000 volts on it. So you always want to just take precaution and assume that any wire on the ground is energized and dangerous.
And what should people do if they see a wire on the ground or facing something like that?
Just call into our office and just report it as a wire down, and someone will come out and respond. As soon as they can. We treat that as a hazardous situation. We go out and inspect it, and if it is. Sometimes it can be a phone wire. Sometimes it could be a cable wire. Sometimes it is our wire. So you always just assume that it is our wire. And we let the people that are trained in that area make the decision on what to do. But that way, the members are safe and there's no risk to them.
That makes sense. How can people safely use space heaters and electric blankets and other devices to prevent fires during the winter?
Well, that's a good question. This time of year, people like to use space heaters. It just kind of takes the chill out of the air. So I actually just looked this up because, they're so commonly used. This is an example. A small space heater that's usually, around $30 to $50 is going to use about 1,500 watts of electricity. So that turns into anywhere from 12, 13 amps that are being used. And that's not the issue there. The issue is the extension cord that people plug them into. Because if I have an outlet on the side of my room, but my lazy boy is in the middle of the living room, where I can sit and watch TV, I want that space heater to be kind of right there blowing on me so that I'm going to stay warm. People just go buy any random extension cord, and we like to save money when we can. If I'm looking at an extension cord and I didn't know the difference, I'm going to buy the extension cord that's 30 feet long that costs $10 versus the 30-foot cord that's costing me $50. That's an obvious choice. But the cheaper cord is only rated for about 10 amps. So you can see that extension cord would be overloaded by this one space heater. The problem is people run that extension cord from their outlet on their wall over by their lazy boys. They plug a surge protector into into it. Then they have the space heater plugged in, they have their lamp plugged in, they have their phone charger, they might have other stuff plugged into that. So they're really overwhelming that extension cord, which creates heat because there's so much load and electricity traveling through it at once. It can't handle that load, and it basically starts melting down the insulated properties on it. And then wherever that's laying, it basically just catches the carpet on fire. It can catch appliances on fire. People kind of start smelling something hot. They assume that, oh, it's my space heater. By then, the carpet's on fire, the upholstery's on fire, and those type of fires tend to spread very quickly. So space heaters, they're great to take the chill out of the air. I would recommend that you use a space heater that has a thermostat on it where you can set it. They also have space heaters that have oil. They kind of look like the old radiator styles where it will actually heat that oil up. The thermostat will then kick it off, and then the oil stays warm and it radiates the heat into the room. Those are the best ones to use. But if you have one of the cheaper ones that just has an on and off switch and it's running all night long and you're asleep, those are the dangerous ones. So if you are going to use one of those though, just plug it directly into your outlet and make sure that it's away from, any clothes, any appliances, or, your couch, lazy boy. Just make sure that it's clear that hot air is not going to directly blow on something.
That makes sense. And that's good to know because I did not know that about extension cords, that you could overload them that way.
Yeah, so the extension cords, when you look at them, they'll have an amp rating and it'll tell you, the gauge wire that it is. And this is rated for 10 amps. This is rated for 15 amps. This is rated for 20 amps. So you definitely want to make sure you pay attention to that when you're buying one, especially if you're going to be using it for a space heater.
That is good to know.
I always tell myself, do I really want to spend the extra money? But if I didn't and my house catches on fire, what's going to be more expensive?
Yes, that is very, very true.
The extra $20 or $30 you're going to spend for that extension cord
is definitely worth it.
Yeah. Plus the heavier ones, they last longer. They're more durable. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you see people's space heaters? Do they end up costing way more than people think they will in terms of electricity?
Yeah. Typically, electric space heaters are not good for your electric bill. It's basically like an electric oven, kind of. It has an electric coil, and then there's a fan that blows. So they are expensive to run. But, things that you can do to kind of prevent that is, wear sweatpants, wear sweatshirts, maybe have a blanket. It's okay for your house to be a little bit chilly, but we live in a society where, hey, it's available and I'm going to do it, right? Growing up as a child, my parents always preached, our light bill was so expensive. It was $30 this month, or it was $40. That was a lot. So if you left the house and, left a light on, that was a sin. Your parents were telling you you're in trouble. And just nowadays people take, electricity for granted and, incomes are up. So people just are not as, I want to say, responsible with their light use or their electricity use. Set your thermostat maybe at 70 instead of 72, things like that. But you can still be comfortable and not have a space heater blowing at 90 degrees on you.
That makes sense. How can people prepare for winter storms and minimize power disruptions?
So that's a good question. I think in the wintertime, people don't really go outside that much, so they don't really look around. We don't get a lot of calls about people concerned about stuff, taking out their electricity, but it's a good idea. So out at the road, wherever the transformer is, there's a pole that has a transformer on it. It's a big round gray thing. And usually there's a wire that runs from that pole to your house. And then that's where your electricity goes into the meter and then it goes into your house. If there are large tree branches above that wire, that are rotted or look like they're going to fall, it's a good idea to call a tree company and have them come out and remove those so that in the middle of the night, if it's 0 degrees and that branch falls, then you're not going to be out without electricity. There's a misconception that the electric company will cut any tree that's close to any power line. So we trim and cut trees out by the primary line, which is usually out by the road, unless you live back a really long lane and there's overhead wire. That is the voltage that's either 12,500 volts or 7,000 volts. If there's 3 wires at the top of the pole, it's 12.5. If there's 1, then it's like 7,200. That's what we trim around. It's safer for us. We have trained professionals that do it. Obviously, we don't want average Joe tree trimming service to be out there doing it. And they don't have the proper equipment. That's dangerous for the public, and we definitely don't want an accident. The wire that goes from the transformer to the house is a lower voltage wire, and typically any tree company would feel safe and comfortable trimming around that. So that's why we recommend that you call just a public, company that does tree work. And that could save you an outage in the middle of the night. And it gives you a peace of mind that, I can go to bed. It's windy. We're going to get some ice. Pine trees typically are pretty bad if we get ice or if we get heavy snow. The branches will bend over and they can only take so much. It's a very brittle tree. And then the branches just snap and then they'll fall. They rip your service down. It's kind of expensive if your service gets ripped off of your house. You got to replace the wire. You got to replace the meter base, pay the electrician to come do it if you don't know how to do that yourself. So you got to balance that out, just like you balance out the cost of a cheaper extension cord versus a more expensive extension cord. Are you willing to pay for the tree service now, or are you going to pay for the electrician later? Unfortunately, we see that they'd rather pay for the electrician later because, it's never going to happen to me. But it's up to them. It's their property. They can do what they want. But that's just a recommendation.
That makes sense. What is the distance like trees and branches should be from a power line? How close do they have to be before it's like, oh, this is something I should worry about?
So really on the main line out at the road, this 7200 lines, trees can grow up within a couple inches of those. Obviously, we have a tree program here. We go around, we monitor, all of our service territory. We're on a 5-year rotation. Obviously, if there's spots that need trimmed, then we pull off of where we are in the rotation to go take care of areas that are of concern. But typically, when we trim, we try to trim back at least 15 feet, like a 360 degree all the way around. And we're trying to go from the ground all the way to the sky so that we have 15-foot clearance anywhere around our wires. It's going to be 15 foot the day that we trim. And then obviously the next growing season, trees grow pretty quick. And within that 5-year limit, when we come back to that same area, they're going to be probably, within a couple of feet. And then we start the process all over. The wire that goes from your house to the transformer pole, it actually has a low voltage wire and it has a rubber coating on it that kind of insulates the wire. So, tree branches can touch that, leaves can touch it, and it's not going to disrupt the service. When a large branch has grown over time, you could have a branch that starts out the size of your pinky, and within 5 years, it'll be like the size of your leg. And that's going to put a lot of pressure and tension on that wire. And then with wind, it's going to rub back and forth. Those are the ones that, if it's going to cause a power disruption, we would rather deal with that. During the daytime, if you call in and say, hey, I think that, is going to cause a problem, we'll come out, take a look at it. If it is something that we can prevent an outage, then we'll definitely take care of it. If it's not a threat to the power line or losing power, then we just recommend that you get a tree company of your own.
That makes sense. What should be in everyone's home emergency kit to prepare for a power outage?
If it's in the wintertime, definitely want to have some blankets, maybe some sweatshirts, and probably some water and some snacks. But, we're pretty lucky. The society that we live in now, or the world that we live in now, especially in Kosciusko, we don't go for a long time without power anymore. So it is a necessity and it's treated, like an emergency. People's power go out. We respond quickly and promptly, and we do what we can in the quickest amount of time to get people's power restored.
How can people keep their homes warm when the power goes out?
We actually get people call in about this quite a bit. In the wintertime, you don't want to leave your doors open to your house and let all the cold air in. And you can try and isolate in your rooms as well. Maybe everybody stay in one room. Obviously, if you had a wood-burning fireplace, that would help too.
That makes sense. What are the most common mistakes people make during outages that you have seen?
Yeah, so I think don't panic. Just because your power goes out, you're probably going to be okay. What we hear a lot is people, they call in and say, we heard a loud bang, our transformer blew up. Typically, it's not a transformer blowing up. It's a fuse that's blowing that's designed to interrupt the power so that basically the transformer does not blow up. And that's what the loud boom is that you're hearing. A misconception is, well, I know electricity. Like I said, I've been doing this, it'll be 21 years, and I'm still learning stuff about electricity. So don't ever have that misconception that I know what I'm doing. Don't ever, think that electric lines on the ground, just because you don't have power in your house, don't ever assume that the lines on the ground are dead. That's a big misconception. Used to hear that a lot with a car accident would hit a pole, and there would be unsafe lines, 4 feet off the ground. Whoever it was would call somebody and they want to explain to you that they know, about the power lines. They know that it's hot, but they don't know how close you can get to it. They don't know the little minor stuff. In this industry, you only get one shot, right? There's no second chances. So always treat everything like it is energized and stay away from it.
Yes, that is very good advice.
Yeah. Also, I would say this is kind of off topic, but I did mention car accidents. Just because the pole's broke does not mean that that power is de-energized. You hear stories, people have accidents, they get out of the car, they survive the crash, and then walking back to the road, it may be dark. They walk into the power line, bad things happen. Obviously, we want to try and prevent that. So if you are in an accident and your car does hit a pole, we recommend that if it's possible, stay in the car. If it's safe, call 911, let first responders get there, and then they can come with the proper lights, the proper training, and they can guide you from there. Usually when you call 911 for a car accident, you hit pole, they're responding 911. It's as quick as they can get there. Everybody wants to get out and kind of see what's going on, but it is safer to stay in the car, especially if you've hit an electric pole. Good words of wisdom there.
That is very good advice, especially during the winter as roads are icy and snowy, and those winter car accidents can happen. What steps should homeowners take after a storm to check for electrical damage?
So when the power comes back on, there could be an issue. If your lights are kind of going dim and bright, you would look for that. That could signify that maybe something got broke at your house that, somebody didn't see. Or it could be that your power blinked, came back on, and you're going to think that you have normal power. The member's going to think they have normal power. And then maybe when the dryer kicks on, and if it's an electric dryer or an electric stove, it's not going to work properly. They may only have power in half of their house. That could be something outside happened, could be at the transformer, could be from the service line from the transformer to the house. You could be only running on partial power. So those are things to look for. If your lights are dimming and bright, you definitely want to call in about that. Get somebody out there to try and prevent, future damage if there was something that was going to damage anything in your home. If it's just out of the ordinary, call in. That's what we always tell everybody. Don't just assume that, it'll be okay.
That's good advice. How can families with medical devices or refrigerated medications prepare for an outage?
So, preparing for an outage, unfortunately, there are just certain areas, if they have lots of trees, they have lots of squirrels, they have lots of wildlife, birds, the power is going to go out probably more so than if you lived out in the middle of a 100-acre field that had no trees. It's just a less probability that the power is going to go out there. So if you live in one of those areas, if you are on an emergency medical device, I would recommend to try and have a battery backup. A lot of people are on oxygen, so they'll have a battery backup for their oxygen. If it goes beyond that, try and have a battery backup. If not, then you need to have an emergency action plan as far as like where you're going to go or, and who's going to get you there. We do that in the business world. You have an emergency action plan for all the employees. I think that's good to do at your own home as well. What are we going to do in this situation because we have this in front of us that we need to deal with? What was the other part of the question? Oh, medicine.
Refrigerated medicine.
I would recommend if you were really worried about it and it was an extended outage, you could always get ice, put it in a cooler, get your medicine in there. Or if it's in the refrigerator, just, kind of bunch it together with other cold stuff. And if you had to get it out, take it and then put it right back in. And you should be okay for several hours on that. Depending on the recommendation on the medicine, obviously. Mm-hmm. Probably something they would want to look into on how long their medicine would last at a certain temperature.
Yeah, I think it's always good for people to think through some of these like emergency situations and, hey, if this happens, this is what we would do or need to do. And then what is the process you and your team go through to fix a power outage once you're notified that there is a power outage?
There's always a lineman on call 24/7. The outage management system that we have, it notifies a call center that we have. That call center then will dispatch that out to the lineman who's on call, and they will let him know that he has 500 people out and it's in this area. So he pulls up his mapping system. He looks to where he needs to go. He looks where the source is coming from, like where the electricity is coming from. He will usually start at the source and then he will drive his way out. So you could drive 3 or 4 miles and not find anything. So you're suspicious, like what caused the power to go out? This is a lot of people. So he may have to, drive it again. And it may be something very small that he didn't see the first time. Because you're kind of looking for the big picture, like, is it a big tree? Is it, the wire down? Is it a car accident? So once the lineman finds the problem, if he needs to call in help, then he's going to call people according to how many people he needs. He may need other trucks. He may need a pole. He may need equipment. He may need wire. He's going to call them. They're going to respond. They have to come to the shop, get all of the hardware, get all the supplies that are needed. And then they're going to drive out to the place where the lineman is. And then they're going to start doing work. So if it's possible to temporary the line, temporary the pole, so that we can get the power restored. That's what we're going to do. And then the lineman will work that wire hot. But if it's just too mangled up and it's not safe for them to do that, or too much work, where the wires completely laying on the ground and there's just a lot of work, they're going to do that while it's de-energized. So sometimes people think, oh, my power's out. They just got to come out and turn a switch on. There is a lot more to it than just turning a switch on. So half of the battle of getting people's power back on is getting the right tools and equipment out there if the lineman on call doesn't have it. So you're waiting for people to respond. And then generally once the workers get there, once they show up, it really goes pretty quick. The guys do a great job of always, working together, get everybody's power back on as quick as possible. And, and the main thing is they have to do it safely. That's the most important thing, not to take shortcuts, and always be mindful that this career, we always have to be teaching the younger generation, because if we're not teaching the younger generation, it's going to die out. So that's important. You need to take time to do that while being efficient at the same time. Those are the things that we try to do to respond to an outage.
That makes sense. What do you wish people knew about power outages? And you probably have covered some of this already, but is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you wish people knew?
So it would be the funniest thing. It'll be, 3 a.m, you get a phone call that you have, an addition's out of power. And so you go to the place where the power's out, and there's, maybe 50 people in this addition. You have to drive through the addition and you have to find, what caused the power to go out. But where the power's being fed from could be a mile away from this addition. So when you're driving through the addition, people will be outside with their flashlights, like waving you down. Did you know that our power's out? And I always wanted to respond and say, oh, I was just in the area driving around. I'm in a big white truck with my yellow flashers on. And it was that's my sense of humor. But I know that they're out there because they're concerned that their power's out. But just because your power's out does not mean that the problem is right there at your house. Mm-hmm. So when the lineman, when he drives by, they may think, oh no, he doesn't know that my power's out. He's in the area at 3 a.m. with his bright lights on because the power's out. He has to make sure that it's safe to turn the power back on, to make sure that there's not a tree that came down and tore wires down, that there's not a car accident, that there's not a hazardous situation that's going to harm somebody if he does turn the power back on. So then he has to drive to where the source is so he can turn the power back on. So a lot of times people are like, where's he going? My power's out right here. We know that. We just have, procedures and protocols that we have to go through to make it safe.
That's good to know, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Just be patient. Like I said, 3 or 4 a.m, we're out there because we know the power's out, not just because we're out, thought we'd drive around.
Yeah, basically don't panic and just be patient, and you guys will get it back on.
Yep.
How can homeowners reduce their electric bill without sacrificing their comfort during the winter?
So if you have a programmable thermostat, that helps. You can program it to be a lower temperature during the day when you're at work. And then maybe like an hour before you get home, you can program it to turn, back up so that it'll be warm when you get home. And then at nighttime, a lot of people turn it down at night because they would rather sleep with it a little bit cooler because you're, in your bed with blankets. Unless you're a hot sleeper, then you're going to program it to be hotter. You can do that. You have LED lights, and that is an option that you can go to our website and you can actually look up your usage with the new advanced meters that we have, and you can kind of look at what your peak times are. So usually it's going to be, morning time when everybody's getting up, and then it's really going to be afternoon time when everybody gets home. But you can look at that, and if you were really concerned about, saving a few dollars here or there, you could look into that and be like, let's, as a family commit to, we're going to work on this. We're going to try and consume less electricity from, 5 in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night. Because during the day when nobody's home, nobody's really using it. Mm-hmm. You can do that. Some people believe in unplugging your, if you had a blender on the counter, your coffee maker, they call that vampire kilowatts or vampire usage. Mm-hmm. It's just the electricity traveling through that appliance that doesn't need to, so you can unplug that. But if you tried all that, then you can get back on, and see if your usage has went down at all. So there are ways to do it. You can actually buy a little monitor that will plug into an outlet, and then you plug each device into it. So if you had a certain device that you were suspicious of, well, I think this may be costing, a little bit more electricity than the normal one, you can plug it into that device compared to your other one, and it'll tell you if it's not working correctly.
That is helpful. And so you mentioned this a little bit, but do you consider smart thermostats and other tech similar to that worth investing in for winter savings?
Yeah, I think, the smart thermostats are definitely worth it. And you can nowadays, especially since we provide fiber to the home, Or if you're not one of our members, as long as you have good internet service, you can do all that from your phone now. Like my dad, he lives in Florida. He lives out in the middle of nowhere here. He can get on his phone and he can control his thermostat and see what's going on, see the temperature in his house. So when he's ready to come home, he'll go down for a week or, a couple days, and then he comes back, but he can control all of that from his phone, which is really nice now. I think that technology is great. Really anything that you can invest in that's going to save you money. It's kind of like back to the extension cord. Are you willing to spend a little bit of money to save money? And there has to be a line there that you're committed on. I'm not going to spend more than this because I'm only going to save this much. It all depends on how aggressive people want to be. You can research all kinds of stuff that, promises to save you this amount of electricity. That's kind of up to the member.
That makes sense. Everyone has to find the right balance for them. How is technology improving power grid resilience against winter storms and other hazards that you've seen develop in the last few years?
Technology has really taken off here probably the last 10 years, and it continues to just improve. The largest thing that we've done has been our outage management system. In the old days, if your power went out, the only way we knew is if you called in. If you lived on a line that had 30 people on it and you were the only person that called in, I would just assume that you were the only person that was out of power. I would show up to your house, look to see, there's no reason why he should be without power. And then I would have to work my way kind of to your neighbor, see if they had power. I would have to do that all the way back to the source. And then that's how I would determine that whole line was out. Then I would make repairs, do whatever I needed to do, then get the power back on. Now with our outage management system, I get the message from our call center and it says, you have 30 people out on this line. And I pull it up on my map. It shows me right where it's fed from. So I know exactly where I'm going now. Instead of having to remember, this address is here and drive there and then try and find it. I have basically a digital map that tells me exactly where I'm going. I show up. I check to make sure that, yes, the power is off. I drive out the line where it tells me the line is off. And then look for whatever caused the power to go out, make the repair, and I go back and turn the power on. So that really saves a lot of time there.
That's awesome. It's really cool to hear how much technology has developed and continues to develop to keep the power up for all of our members.
It is probably, I think if you talked, we've had a lot of people retiring here in the last several months, but when you talk to them, what's the biggest change? I would say, they all say, the technology.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started, there was no technology. It was paper map and, like I said, phone calls. I was lucky enough that when I started pulling calls as a lineman, that we had a pager. Do you know what a pager is?
I do, yes. Okay. I'm not quite that old.
Yeah. So we would have a pager because back then cell phone signal was not as reliable as a pager signal. And you would get the page that would beep, 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 beep. And then you would find a number and it would actually have the location of where the power was out. The bad thing about that is if you had 20 people out, you were going to get 20 pages that said all 20 people were out so that you knew. But before that, your home phone would ring and then you would say, hello. They'd say, hey, we have power outage at this location, address. The lineman would say, okay, I'm going to respond. If he left, then basically, the husband or wife would have to answer the phone after they left and be like, hello. And they'd be like, we have more outages. So then the spouse would have to write down everybody else's power that was out. So the lineman, he thinks, I only have this one person out. Then he comes home and then his spouse has this long list of everybody else that was out of power. So they always said that at the Christmas party, the spouses would get the Christmas bonus. And that was their reward for, working for the company.
Wow. So it really was a team effort.
It was because, they didn't get paid to do that.
Yeah.
But we always joke, like, what would you have done if you were single? You'd have to pay somebody to come to your house and take those phone calls, I guess. But,
wow.
So technology changed that. So I'm thankful for that. I'm sure my wife is thankful too.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah. Being married to a lineman is, already stressful enough because they're getting called out at the worst times. It's storming, car accident, ice storm, whatever it is, we're going out there because it's not a normal situation. And that's what we have to respond to. And you're in a high risk industry. That's why safety is always preached so heavily. So, spouses do worry about the linemen. And then on top of that, they're getting woke up in the middle of the night as well. So the phone rings, whatever, the spouse is going to wake up and then they start, what do you have to do? How much is it? And I think you just kind of learn that you minimize what you're going to say because you don't want them to worry. And then when you get home, you just, it was this, I got it taken care of. Or sometimes you have to make the phone call and say, I'm going to be out here a long time. So I'm okay, don't worry. But it's going to be several hours before I'm home. Depending on, usually that's a car accident that, you have to get several people to come in, or it could be severe cold. You have a tree come down and just does a lot of damage, slows everything down because it's cold. You got to take warm up breaks.
Yes, we are very grateful for our linemen who do a dangerous and often really difficult job.
Yep, absolutely.
Are there any common myths about electric safety, saving energy in the winter that we haven't already talked about that you run into? And is there anything else we didn't cover that you would think is important to mention?
I mean, not offhand. I think you had a lot of good questions here. I hope that people get a lot out of it. I always tell people, if you're not sure, you can always call in. We do have a lot of people here that you can talk to if you have questions about anything. A lot of educated people that, really know their stuff, I say. A lot of smart people. They love what they do. So when you call in to ask questions about that, they kind of get excited because that's what they like to do. And if they don't know, they're going to find somebody that does and get you to the right person. But other than that, I don't really have anything to add.
That's awesome. Yes, we're very grateful for our linemen and for our KREMC team and their vast amount of knowledge about these topics. Thank you for joining us today and talking to us about electric safety during the winter. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You have been listening to Livewire, the official podcast of KREMC. To learn more about KREMC, visit our website, kremc.com, or follow us on social media. Thanks for listening.